a few things have become very apparent as far as what allows teams or what helps teams move past the prototype round and get selected for the MVP round. One thing I will tell you is that very often the difference between making it and not making it is slim. Uh, Generally, the teams that have not been able to deliver have self-selected to drop out at this point. And those who have moved forward or are choosing to move forward and submit a prototype, everyone has something. They have enough that they be able to convince the reviewers to move them on to the MVP phase. So what that means is what's really important are just the little details, the little things about the way you present yourself to the reviewers that will allow you to get over that hurdle and be selected or not. So what I've done here is in this presentation is I kind of distilled some of those big lessons that I have seen, the common traits of the teams that have moved forward, as well as some of the common pitfalls for the teams that have failed to move forward and things that I have seen. I think I've told all of you before, I have seen teams that if you had asked me in February if they were going to make it, I'd say they were making it all the way and they probably were going to win this competition, only to see them drop out at the or be eliminated at the prototype phase because they just didn't hit a home run on their presentation. They just didn't do a good job of conveying what they had built. So with that said, what this whole thing is about is the pitch. I know this is a demo video, and it is that as well. We'll talk about it. But your entire demo really needs to be framed around this idea of you are pitching your idea to individuals. This is not that different than if you're in an entrepreneurship challenge and you're trying to pitch your idea to investors and get them to give you money. Now, granted, these reviewers are not giving you their money, they're giving you our money, but they're still trying to give you money, and you have to convince them that you are worthy of that investment. Okay, you have to convince them that your idea is worthy of going on. So how do you do that? For most of you, I've already talked about this, kind of the narrative structure that has proven without fail to be the best way of conveying your information in the 5 minutes that you have for the video. And that is 3 segments within your video, starting with why. Why are you doing this thing? Why does it matter? Why should anybody care? Generally, that's around 2 minutes. Okay, now notice I'll say around on all of these because this is not a hard and fast rule. You might be able to do it perfectly in 1 minute. And if that's the case, that's fantastic and you save time for the rest of the presentation. I would be nervous if you started going over 2 minutes in this section, but you know, you have to make the decisions for what your presentation is. But this guidance that I'm giving you is good ballpark of what you should be shooting for. So you've got your first section of why, around 2 minutes. Then you move into your what. This is the demo. What did you build? What did you create? That should be around 2 minutes long. Then you move into your final section, which is the what's next. And this is the giving the perception, or I'm sorry, given the illustration of what you're going to be moving into in the MVP phase. So if you've done this in the what section, here's what we've created. What next is saying, this is how we'll build on this. We are not going to simply lay down our keyboards after this and not build anything new. We have something that we're going to create, and this is what it might look like in the MVP phase. So let's dig into these a little bit. For the why. If you do any entrepreneurship or business stuff, this is what's called your pathos, or maybe you study Greek and Latin, I don't know. But this is your pathos. This is your appeal to people's emotions. Sometimes if you've ever watched pitch videos on YouTube, you'll see them, put up a picture of somebody and say, this is Beth. Beth is a blah, blah, blah in blah, blah, blah industry. And the problem she's facing is, and kind of telling the story about the person. It can seem really artificial at times, but there's a reason all the great pitch videos start that way. Is because what they're trying to do is that pathos to get you invested emotionally in the thing that they have created, to convince the reviewers that this thing matters, There are a lot of different ways to do this. Some are more genuine feeling than others. Number one, if you have a personal story that caused you to want to work on this project to begin with, if you feel comfortable telling it, tell it. The reason being is that when you tell a story about something that's personally meaningful to you, you cannot hide the emotion behind that. You cannot hide the passion you have for the subject area when you talk about that thing. And so it just comes out, it just oozes out of your pores when you're talking, whether you want to or not. Even sometimes when you're reading a script, you can still hear it in a person's voice. So telling a personal story is always best if you have one and if you're comfortable. Some of the things some of you are working on, it's not going to be a comfortable place for you to talk about. That's okay. No pressure. But if you are, that should be your first shot. Second one would be talking about the conversations that you've had with your subject matter experts. So most of you have been in contact with people who do have personal stories about all this, about why it's important. Maybe some of them are more in the professional nature, some of them are more in personal nature, whatever it may be. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to convey to the reviewers that you have actually talked to the people that are going to be using this tool. You've talked to the people for which this is going to be personally meaningful. And you can tell their story on their behalf, not through their own words on screen, but through your words conveying what you've heard from them. At the very least, you can do that. Next step away from that would be creating up what's called, a persona. This is the making up the story of Beth, who's the, who's the individual who's struggling with depressive disorder, and telling Beth's story. And it's all artificial, but it's still grounding it in a person, something that you can become emotionally attached to. Those are kind of the three levels of it. Either you tell the story yourself, or you tell the story on somebody else's behalf, or you make up the story, but it's a plausible story. It's something that is derived from real life. One thing you might consider, and the reason I put this very last is because this can be challenging in a few different ways, but one thing you might consider is asking your subject matter experts that you've been working with, seeing if one or more of them would be willing to speak directly on camera for you. Now, there's some huge risks here. Number one, you don't know what they're going to say. Number two, you cannot necessarily make certain that they're going to be brief and succinct with what they say. And even though you have 5 minutes, they might start drifting off and talking about some things, and now all of a sudden you've got a huge editing job on your plate. So there are some risks with it. Obviously, the benefits are what we talked about first. It's a person telling their own story, and that is going to grab in the attention of your reviewers. If you all watched the videos that I sent you 3 videos to the team leads. I sent an email to the rest of you. I sent it in the Teams channel. But I sent you a video for AI Guide, I sent you a video for Bloom, and I sent you a video for MedArmor. All 3 of them did this in one way or the other. The one that stands out most to me was AI Guide. If you watched that video, you saw, now they had 7 minutes last year. You've got 5, so you've got less time. But when you watched the AI Guide video, you could easily see where things could have been condensed down. They took their time, particularly in this first section. But one of the most powerful things they did, and the reason that they were the top reviewed proposal in that phase last year, I think, is because they did what you see on screen right here. They got an individual who had a visual impairment and had that person talk about the challenges they face in daily life. And they showed additional stock video of people dealing with the issues of moving around and independence. There is no way you watched the first 3 minutes of that video and walked away saying, yeah, what they're doing is not important. There's no way, because it came right from the person's mouth. So that's where real power is in doing that. MedArmor went a different way. They did, I said that's the top, and I said, we had the middle of the sandwich, and we had at the very least, they created a persona. They created a persona of Marina, who wanted to be able to identify, her potential for getting disease in the future, so she could do her financial planning for it. This is a situation where it was still very effective. The three I gave you were the top three reviewed teams last year in the prototype phase. Okay. So what MedArmor did still was effective. They still conveyed that idea of here's a real person in a plausible real situation, and here's how our tool is going to help them. The teams that did not do so well last year, and I struggled a little bit. I thought about showing you guys some videos of videos that didn't do very well, but then I felt uncomfortable about that. Even though the teams gave me permission, I don't know, it didn't settle well with me. But what I will tell you is the videos that did not do well, or the pitches that did not do well, went right into the technology. What we built is, and then went into a screencast of what they built. Those were the least effective videos. And I think you can see why, based on everything that I just said. So once you've done the why, you've got them. They're on the edges of their seats. They're like, oh, I want to know about what they built. They're going to solve that problem. They're excited. They're invested. They want to see what's next. This is when you hit them with the demo, the what. Now, this is the ethos. This is appealing to the individual's reason and your credibility as a developer. Okay, your credibility as somebody who can actually deliver on a solution. Couple things you have to remember in this section. This is the number one mistake I see teams make on the second bullet, is they are not succinct. What they do is they open up their tool, they open up whatever they've built, and they walk through every stinking button that's on their tool. They click on the contact us and say, here's our information, and here's how you get us by email. And they click on their copyright down on the bottom and their footer and all this stuff that reviewers just could not care less about. What you need to do is you need to take 2 minutes and you have to show them what matters. Not everything that you've built. The rest of it's great. I'm glad you did it. But focus in on what addresses that story you just told. So when you have that individual with a vision impairment who's talking about the difficulty of being independent and being able to navigate their way to a bathroom in a public place, the contact us page does not relate to that. It doesn't move that narrative anywhere. The functionality does. And again, if you watch that AI guide video, the demo that they showed was the tool in action, how it related directly to what that person was just saying that they needed. You could easily see all the connecting points there. So that is the number one thing in this section for your demo. Be succinct, show them what matters, not everything that you've created. And number 3, script it. Do not wing this. Do not think, well, I'll just walk them through and talk about, what's on the screen. No. Please don't. Write it out in advance. Read it through a bunch of times so that you can get a little bit more natural in the way that you're saying it. And then read it as you walk through. Okay. Luckily, for most cases, you're not going to be on camera during the demo. The focus is going to be on what you've created. Now, for a few of you, I could see where you might need to be in the video based on what you're building. But for most of you, you're going to be hidden. You can have a script in front of you and read it as you go along. Still try to get inflection in there. Still try to have some meaning and changes of tone. Don't become a robot. But script it out in advance. Okay. So once you've done the why, you've done the what, now you have to talk about what's next. A couple things to think about in this section. What you're doing is you're talking about where you can or where you will go with your idea. Now, it is not, nobody's taking notes on this section of your video. and holding you to that in the next section. Okay? Read between the lines of what I'm saying. You can be aspirational in what you say is next. Okay? You can go beyond what you think is a 100% achievable and go a little bit beyond there in order to be inspirational to the people who are watching your video. Okay? That said, grounded in reality. Don't tell me that you're solving all the problems in the world. Don't tell me you're going to have 100,000 users by August. We had a team 2 years ago who said that they're going to have, I think it was like 10,000 users. Excuse me. As soon as everyone heard that, they, credibility shot. Now all of a sudden you're hearing everything that comes after that statement with these people know what they're doing. Because you just know that something like that is not achievable. So be aspirational, but at the same time, don't say anything that is going to pull me out of the story that you're telling. Okay, we've all watched a bad movie where something happens in it, and all of a sudden your ability to live in this world of disbelief, it just is broken and shot, and you're pulled right out of it. You do not want that. You want the reviewers, when your video ends, to go, oh, it's over? You want them wanting more at the end of this. Okay. You only have a minute in this section, so you cannot do everything. You can barely do anything, to be quite honest with you. You're going to have a minute and change, whatever's left over from your first 2 sections that you didn't use up. So one of the best things that you can do is simply point to the reviewers to your documentation. Okay. So one of the big questions that always comes to me is, well, what about our team? Do we introduce our team? I would say that it would be a huge mistake to try to introduce all of your team members. Okay. What you can do is you can say something along the lines of, in your concluding section, we are a extremely talented and motivated team, and we cannot wait for you to select us into this phase and for us to be able to build our minimal viable product for you. For more information on our team, please see our documentation. Or when you're talking about where are you going to go, what's next with your idea, you can say, for full details, please see our development timeline and our documentation. Push people over to that documentation where you've got all the space and time in the world to be able to give them what they need. Okay. And you can do that in a couple words and less than a couple seconds within your video. So once you've got all that, you've gotten your video, you've got it edited, you've got it uploaded to YouTube, you've given me the link, everything is submitted, it's going to go out to the reviewers. And just as a reminder, and I've sent this link a bunch of times, but there's a link on our website that tells you the full requirements for this section for your submission, as well as the criteria for review in more detail than I have here. But just as a reminder, impact, feasibility, implementation and scaling, team capabilities, and technical sophistication are all 10 points. Okay, those are the bulk of your review. Please note, use of AI and ML technologies, 5 points. Use of available data, 5 points. User interface and consumability, 5 points. Lesser on all 3 of those, because we know it's not going to be as mature as those other sections. Impact, feasibility, and implementation. There's 30 points right there for this entire process. You can see very clearly where our emphasis is. This is not about you convincing us that you've done something with AI nobody has ever done before. This is all about convincing us that you've done something that matters, something that's important. Okay. And the rest of it just comes along with that. And again, if you want to see full details of this, it's all on the website. You can get all that. Couple last things I want to leave you with. First, script the entire thing. No, you are not good enough to wing this. Okay. I don't care if you think you are. I don't care if you've done 100 videos before. I have yet to see somebody who is able to wing it and make it sound as good as somebody who scripts it. Okay. I cannot even count at this point how many presentations I have given in my life. I still script things. I still practice. I still rehearse. Okay. So script your stuff from beginning to end. Whether you read it verbatim, that's up to you. Sometimes that can sound robotic. At least have bullet lists of topic by topic for you to speak to, okay? It will make a huge difference. Finish your video early and edit it. You do not want to have on your timeline that you're going to get this thing done on the 31st, okay? It just takes away all of your ability and time to go in and make changes. And it also takes away your ability to have other people review it for you and be able to fix errors that you didn't pick up because you're so deep in this, okay? So get it done as early as you can. Have other people review it. I'm one person who can do that. There are plenty of others. Ask your friends, ask your enemies. I always say ask your enemies because they're going to be the ones who will tell you the truth. Show it to them and get their feedback, okay? And a few last reminders. You only have 5 minutes. Keep it simple. You will have a little bit more time in the MVP phase. We have had teams do like full animation and things like that in those videos. For this, just keep it simple. Don't try to do everything and wow us with some brand new approach. Some of you might be able to pull that off. And if you've got a ton of experience in this space, then maybe you can. But if you've made less than a half dozen videos in your life before, this is not the time to try to pick up a new skill of using Adobe Premiere and doing some fancy transitions and things, okay? Keep it simple and submit it. You'll notice in the criteria that we just passed, there was not a single one about video quality, okay? It's about conveying the message. Skip the bullets. And what I mean by this is some teams in the past have done a video where it was simply 5 or 6 PowerPoint slides with a bunch of bullets on it, and the team read the bullets. Okay. That does not trigger my pathos. Listening to you read bullets from a PowerPoint doesn't get me emotionally invested in what you're doing. Okay, there is a reason stories resonate with human beings. You know, long time ago we were all gathered around fires telling each other stories, and it's deep in us. So being able to tell a story will elicit that emotion and get that investment from the people listening to it. I don't think in 100,000 years we're going to be talking about PowerPoint bullets, you know, getting that pathos going, getting that emotional response. It's going to be in storytelling. So go that way rather than having things listed out in bullet points on the screen. Tell a story. I just said that. And finally, be honest. Honesty and being genuine comes through in a video. You can see it in the eyes, you can hear it in the voice. Be honest in the stories that you tell, and it will come out in your presentation, okay? Don't try to create something artificial that you think is going to trigger an emotional response, that is going to trigger a deep caring for what you're doing. It is better to be honest and not have as engaging of a story than to try to make things up and push things too far. Okay, and that's really it. So what I want to do is, what I want to do is just see. Do you have any questions about all of that? Is there anything that that I can help with? Do you have any questions about how to create your video? And like I said, you all have mics, so you can turn them on if you have a question.
Hi, thank you for presenting all of this. And I was going to ask about the idea of if we imagine our product can go in a number of directions, how much should we be talking about the variety of directions in our video versus just like telling a story about like our one, you know, most reasonable or most, possible direction.
Pick one, because giving multiple makes it seem like you don't know what you're doing or where you're going. Okay, you'd be better off selecting one and telling that story and having people say, well, they could also do such and such, even though you already thought about it. You know, gives them the chance to come out and say, well, you could also, and give you other possibilities. You're better off with that than seeming like you're just blowing in the wind and you don't know where you're going. The reason being for that is for all of us who have a lot of experience with development, is if you don't know where you're going, you will never get anywhere. Development falls apart very, very quickly when you have too many end goals in mind. Okay. I'd also say that if you have too many possible, really different directions that you are considering, maybe go back to your vision statement that you have for your project and figure out, do you need to refine that a little bit? Do you need a little bit more clarity on exactly why you're doing this? Well, we'll leave it at that then, which came out a minute early, so that's not too terribly bad. We'll leave it at that. You guys all know where I am. So if you need anything, reach out, send me the video if you want me to review your video. Really think about some of the things that I said tonight. And I'll send out this PowerPoint presentation too if you want to share it out. I'll send it out with the video of this session. But really think about that narrative structure that I described, and in particular, spend a lot of time thinking about that first 2 minutes. Because if you lose them in the first 2 minutes, you're going to have to, you only have 3 minutes to try to pull them back in, and it's just not going to work. Okay, you have to get them right from the beginning. Watch those 3 videos I sent you a couple more times. They're only a few minutes long. Watch them a couple more times and notice how they did what they did, because they were extremely successful. So use those as an example. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night. And if you need anything, you know where I am.